Already, taking it right to Republicans, calling them out where they're wrong, and working together with them where it's possible to do so. And he's found some ways to do that. He's explained it beautifully what's been going on. We have a real champion for us there. Give it up for Rip Sullivan.
Good evening, Arlington Democrats.
Good evening.
So, my name is Rip Sullivan, but I know that many of you, when you look at me, what you really are thinking is, he's that guy, or he's one of those 7 folks who screwed up my 4th of July last year. It is hard to believe that it was almost a year ago to the day, 364 days actually, when I stood at this same podium, which at that point was in the middle of that 7-day, was it 7, Andrew? 8-day, 6-day sprint. And it was just remarkable. I'm sure you had the same experience, Andrew. You all, I'm sure, painfully remember the election was July, whatever it was, 7. And the voters were coming in straight from the beach. They smelled like sunscreen. You know, they were all coming in straight from the beach, and we were worried, of course, about turnout and that sort of thing. So my big announcement this year is that I'm not going to screw up your 4th of July weekend. You will get to enjoy the 4th of July weekend, at least as far as I'm concerned, because what we didn't know last year, when we were all working so hard on that election, and when I was whining so regularly and loudly about how quickly things were moving, is that what we really did last year was win 2 elections. We won 2 elections. I'm here to report to you, I'm sure this is not news to any of you, I have drawn no opponent. We seem to have scared them away. So thank you very much for that. Just in case there is any doubt, and I suppose with no opponent, this isn't a particularly risky thing to say, but I am announcing my candidacy for re-election today. So I like my chances. I think I have 1 vote out of my house. I know that at least. So that would seem to sort of suggest an opportunity to relax. But that is, of course, the wrong thing for me to do. No one here can relax. Patrick can't relax. Alfonso can't relax. Mark can't relax. We have a big job ahead of us. What this really does, from my perspective, the fact that I've drawn no opponent, is that it frees me up to do what I promised to all of you last year was high on my list of things to do. And that is to work to elect lots and lots of other Democrats around the state. So, a couple minutes on why that's important. It seems self-evident, but let me just tell you a little bit now based on my observations of my first session down in Richmond. You know, the prevailing wisdom after the session was that it was a quiet session, a civil session, and that nothing, you know, there wasn't a lot of bickering back and forth, and a lot of the headlines about partisanship didn't happen this year. But I'm here to tell you that there was a lot bubbling beneath the surface last year. There was a lot going on that didn't make the headlines. There's been a big discussion about how there was no Medicaid fight last year. Well, the reason there was no Medicaid fight last year is because the Republican majority simply, in a frankly rather childlike way, said, we're not going to talk about it. We're just not going to let you talk about it. That's got to change. They're not going to start talking about it, as my friend Patrick Hope has said before, until they start losing elections over this issue. And we need to have some of them lose elections over this Medicaid issue. There was no, I call it Rachel Maddow moment. You know, there was nothing that embarrassed the state and landed us on television like had happened a couple of years prior to that. But I'm here to tell you that there were some near misses in that regard last year. For instance, there was this incredible moment on the floor of the House of Delegates when a bill which had flown through committee and got to the floor of the House, having to do with legalizing ninja stars and nunchucks and switchblades and spring-loaded weapons, flew through the House on a party line vote. And it was only after an impassioned speech by our friend Alfonso Lopez that the Republican majority sort of went back and I think what happened was a couple of adults in the room said, "What are we doing? What are we doing?" And the next day, the very next day, that same Republican majority that had passed this bill in a blink of an eye, they stood up and they reversed themselves. They got up, they said, "We want to reconsider our own crazy action," and they defeated the bill. They didn't invite me into the room, but I am confident that what was said in the Republican caucus that evening was, we're going to get killed on this issue in the elections this fall. If we do this, we'll get killed on this in the elections this fall. Well, guess what? This issue will come back, and issues like it will come back in the next session because there is no election for state offices next year. And they will feel emboldened to do the same thing again. So we need to be pointing out to the voters that this is the kind of thing that will happen in a non-election year. There was a couple of other things. There was a notion that the budget was a sort of happy place, and all there was peace in the valley in the budget. But one of the things that nobody talked about was that the first version of the budget that came through, put in by the Republican majority, contained the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment outlined abortions, even in the case of fetal abnormality. And everybody in this room who you would have expected to voted against that, and thank God for the Senate, because the Senate took that out of the budget. But once again, unless we start getting rid of some of these Republicans, that's going to keep coming back over and over again. There was a bill that went through the House of Delegates that would require, when you're sending in by mail your absentee ballot to be received by some bureaucrat in the Board of Elections of your locality, a piece of paper, they were going to require that you send a photo ID with it. As if that person would be able to say, "Oh yeah, this is an absentee ballot from Herschel Cantor. And here's a picture of him, I know him." It's crazy. And it went right through. The governor, God bless him, vetoed it. It survived the House of Delegates by one vote. One vote. This kind of stuff was going on and is going to continue to go on until we elect more Democrats. Lurking the entire session, the Constitutional Convention. As we were walking the session every day, people getting buttonholed. Will you vote for the Constitutional Convention? They were close to having enough votes to bring this bill to the floor. It was on the docket, what, a week? For a week, Patrick? Every day they took it off the docket because they didn't have enough votes. But if they could have just gotten a couple more votes, they wanted a Constitutional Convention to do all sorts of mischief. Everybody in this room knows what they want to do with that. Same-sex marriage. We were well ahead of the curve. I put in some legislation, other people put in some legislation to fix the Code of Virginia, to anticipate what was going to be happening when same-sex marriage was upheld by the Supreme Court of Virginia, or the Supreme Court of the United States. Those bills all got summarily killed out of the hope that was still reigning on the other side of the aisle, that the Supreme Court would do precisely the wrong thing. And how, you know, if it weren't so sad, it would be comical watching the current national Republican presidential candidates tie themselves in knots over what's going to happen, right? What can they say without getting in too much trouble with their base? And the fact of the matter is, they're all saying exactly what their base wants them to say. And what I expect we will see next year is the kind of thing they're talking about in Texas, and of course the kind of thing that happened in Indiana. All sorts of legislation about religious freedom, trying to make the law of Virginia that people can still ignore same-sex couples, not sell them flowers for their wedding and that sort of thing. That will come back in a non-election year. And what do we need to fight it off? More Democrats. So, I apologize for my coarse language, but I'm just going to say it. We had 32 Democrats last year. And 32 just sucks. We need more Democrats, ladies and gentlemen. And I made this promise to you last year. Now, if you were here last month, you saw Alfonso give a terrific presentation about what he and David Toscano and Charnel Herring and our other leadership have been doing to come up with great candidates around the Commonwealth. And we've been busy raising money. Alfonso's been recruiting terrific candidates. We've got a plan of action as to how we're going to raise more, we're going to elect more Democrats. We are going to defend Kathleen Murphy's seat. We are going to send Jen Boysko to Richmond. We're going to send Don Shaw to Richmond. We're going to send Lori Buchwald to Richmond. We're going to send John Bell to Richmond. We have winnable races all around the Commonwealth. And while we seem to be in good shape here in Arlington with most of our stuff, I need all of you to be thinking more broadly. I need you to be thinking about what's happening down in Southside. I need you to be thinking about what's happening down in the Peninsula. Because we can and will increase our numbers. The magic number this year is 37. It gets us another member on each committee. Another member will help. Next year, of course, we've got some redistricting litigation going on. We hope that we can get our numbers even higher. But 32 is too low, and you can't get to 51 without going through 37. How are we going to do it? I want to channel our governor for just a moment here and talk about how the Democratic message is what's going to resonate with voters all across the Commonwealth this fall. Democratic message, democratic principles are what's great for what our governor calls the New Virginia economy. And Republicans are wrong on all these issues. Tolerance, right? Tolerance, inclusiveness. Right? I got one word for you. Indiana. Remember, we need to remind all voters what happened in Indiana when they tried to put that bill through having to do with religious freedom. Businesses, big businesses said, we're not even going to go to Indiana. Well, Virginia has that same situation, right? If we start mucking around with going backwards on issues of tolerance, we're going to short circuit the New Virginia economy. We are going to be saying to businesses, you don't want to come to Virginia. Tolerance, a democratic value, it's good for business in Virginia. The environment, what could be more pro-business? Creating jobs. Creating jobs, bringing new businesses to Virginia. North Carolina is kicking our butt when it comes to attracting alternative energy into that state, people spending money and paying taxes. We need to do better on that. That's a democratic value that we need to be talking about all across the Commonwealth. Education. What could be more pro-business than education? Creating an educated and talented workforce. Virginia's always been terrific at that. We can't take our eye off that ball. We're not spending any more money on K-12 now than we were 7 years ago. We need to fix that. Transportation. What could be better for the New Virginia economy than making sure that our transportation network is as modern as can be, that our transit systems are in place, working, and we're thinking ahead about how we're going to move people around the Commonwealth. That's good for business. It's good for the New Virginia economy. It's what voters will resonate with voters. And finally, healthcare. Patrick, one of our great champions down there, was just talking about that. Expanding Medicaid, getting more people insured, a healthy workforce, a healthy populace. That is good for Virginia. It's good for the Commonwealth. It's good for the New Virginia economy. And we just have to make it happen. So I want to, just to conclude here, I've probably taken more than my 6 minutes. I apologize, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank everybody. It's been a remarkable year. I have enjoyed it like Patrick. I've come to love the job. I hope I've done a couple things over the course of the last year that have made you feel as if you did the right thing. I will tell you, Mark, one thing you learn when you get to Richmond is sometimes you got to think a session or 2 or 3 ahead. But it's the same thing, right? If you're going to pass it 6 years from now or 4 years from now, you got to get people starting to talk about it now. And that's what Mark's going to be doing with the rest of us when we get there. So thank you. I appreciate all of your help. I really could use more of your help. We're going to elect a lot more Democrats this year. And let me give you one shameless plug. I guess it's the last day of this year, on July 30th of this year. We'll get this on all the proper websites, and we'll send you all the proper emails. I promise I will not send you 4 emails every day. But I'm going to be hosting a what I hope you'll find interesting fundraiser. Very special guest, a guy named Mark Elias, whose name may not mean much to some people in here, but he is the general counsel to the Hillary campaign. He is the lead counsel in the redistricting legislation, both with respect to Bobby Scott's litigation and the House of Delegates litigation. He's just filed litigation here in Virginia to try to set aside the voter ID law and to shorten lines at polling places around the Commonwealth and to improve what we do with restoring voting rights for felons. And he's got litigation pending in battleground states all across the country on that sort of thing. He'll be there to talk about these issues, all of which have been important to me, and I've talked about probably ad nauseum from your perspective. But voting rights, expanding voting rights, making it easier rather than harder to vote in Virginia, it's important to me, and Mark Elias is on the cutting edge of that. He'll be appearing on July 30th out at a law firm at Tyson's Corner. I'd love to see all of you there. It'll be a fascinating evening. So, I'm running for re-election. I would appreciate your vote. Thanks for listening.